Have you ever felt like you're chasing something that doesn't quite make sense? Matthew 19 begins with a question that hits us all. What really matters in life? Jesus is challenged by the Pharisees about marriage, but his answer goes far beyond. He speaks of commitment, sacrifice, and divine purpose. Imagine finding answers that could transform your relationships forever. Let's dive into this chapter that promises to revolutionize your perspective. The Pharisees try to trap Jesus with a question about divorce. They want to catch him off guard, but Jesus responds with authority. Marriage is God's plan. He quotes Genesis saying, "Two become one." Let's think about it. What if true love required more than feelings? Matthew 19 challenges us to see commitment as sacred. Have you ever reflected on what holds your relationships together? But Jesus doesn't stop there. He speaks of faithfulness, not just in marriage, but in life. Imagine a true story. Anna and Mark, married for 20 years, faced crises, but chose to forgive and rebuild. Today, they're stronger than ever. Matthew 19 shows that love requires effort. What are you willing to sacrifice for those you love? This lesson could change everything. Then something unexpected happens. Jesus welcomes children while the disciples try to push them away. He says, "Let the little children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." That's profound. A child trusts, loves without complications. What if you lived with that simplicity? Matthew 19 invites us to let go of pride. Have you ever considered the power of a pure heart? But beware. Matthew 19 also brings a warning. Jesus speaks about what pulls us away from God. He doesn't lightly condemn divorce, but points to hardness of heart. Think of a choice you made for convenience, not love. How did it affect you? Matthew 19 challenges us to align our decisions with a higher purpose. What if your choices reflected something eternal? Now picture a rich young man approaching Jesus. He asks, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus responds with the commandments, but goes further. "Sell everything, give to the poor, and follow me." The young man leaves sad. Why? Because his heart was tied to wealth. Have you ever felt that weight? Matthew 19 asks. What can't you let go of? The story of the rich young man is a shock. Kept the commandments, but something held him back. Think of something you value too much. Money, status, comfort. Matthew 19 teaches that none of these buy true happiness. What if you had to give it up for something greater? That question lingers. Jesus is calling us to something radical. But it's not all about loss. Jesus promises that those who leave everything for him receive far more. Think of someone who gave up a career for a greater purpose and found peace. Matthew 19 shows that sacrifice has a reward. Have you ever done something like that? What's stopping you from taking that step? This promise is for you. The rich young man's story also speaks of priority. Jesus doesn't say wealth is evil, but it can't be your God. Imagine living free from the weight of always wanting more. Matthew 19 challenges us to put God first. What would your life be like if you did that? That's the key to a meaningful life. Here's the question. What would you do if Jesus asked you to leave everything? Matthew 19 isn't just about rules. It's about the heart. Each lesson leads us to reflect. Where does my loyalty lie? Before we continue, let me know. Can I move to the next part of the script? Matthew 19 doesn't stop surprising. Jesus tells the parable of the vineyard workers. A landowner hires workers at different times, but pays them all the same. It seems unfair, doesn't it? But Jesus is talking about grace. God doesn't measure our worth by what we do, but by his love. Have you ever felt undervalued for not doing enough? This story changes everything. Picture the scene. Workers sweating since early morning, but those who arrived late get the same pay. They complain, but the landowner says, "Can't I be generous?" Matthew 19 teaches that God's grace doesn't follow our rules. Think of a time you received something you didn't deserve. How did it feel? This parable is an invitation to gratitude. But grace also challenges. How often do we judge those who don't deserve it? Jesus calls us to celebrate God's goodness, not question it. Think of someone you think doesn't deserve forgiveness. What if God saw them as equal to you? Matthew 19 forces us to let go of judgment. This lesson can transform how you see others. The parable also speaks of humility. First will be last, Jesus says. Imagine a leader who chooses to serve instead of command. I know the story of Clara, who gave up a promotion to help her team. She gained respect and peace. Matthew 19 shows that being last can be the greatest privilege. Have you ever lived this? There's more. Jesus predicts his death in Matthew 19. He knows what's coming but presses on. Think of that courage. He calls us to carry our cross, to face challenges with faith. Have you ever faced something that seemed impossible? Matthew 19 reminds us that with God all things are possible. The promise is for you. The mother of two disciples asked Jesus to let them sit at his side in the kingdom. Jesus responds, "You don't know what you're asking." He speaks of sacrifice, not glory. Think of a time you sought recognition, but learned to serve. Matthew 19 teaches that greatness comes from service. How can you serve today? This part of the chapter is a call to action. Jesus doesn't want passive followers. He challenges us to live with purpose, to choose what matters. Imagine changing one decision today to align your life with God. What would it be? Matthew 19 gives us courage to act. Are you ready for that step? But there's a catch. Following Jesus demands everything. He says it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom. It's not about money. It's about attachment. What holds you back? Matthew 19 challenges us to let go of those chains. Imagine the freedom of living without that weight. It's possible. Jesus' promise is clear. Those who leave everything for him receive 100-fold. Think of a story of someone who left comfort for a calling and found joy. Matthew 19 assures us that sacrifice is worth it. Do you believe that? Before we move on, can I go to the next part? Now, Matthew 19 takes us to the heart of faith. Jesus speaks of eternal rewards, but also earthly sacrifice. He promises that those who leave home, family, or possessions for him will have eternal life. Imagine the story of Peter, who left his nets to follow Jesus. He gained more than he lost. And you, what are you willing to leave behind? This promise isn't empty. Jesus speaks of a kingdom where the last are first. Think of someone you admire for their generosity, maybe someone who gave everything without expecting anything. Matthew 19 shows that God sees those sacrifices. Have you ever done something like that? The reward may be closer than you think. But there's a challenge. Living for God requires detachment. Jesus doesn't promise ease, but purpose. Imagine living without fear of loss, trusting God provides. Matthew 19 invites us to that trust. Have you ever experienced this? One small choice can change everything. What will yours be? The story of Mary illustrates this. She left a stable job to serve in a mission. Everyone called it crazy, but she found true joy. Matthew 19 teaches that God's call is bigger than comfort. Have you felt that call? What's stopping you from answering? That question is crucial. Here's an invitation. If you're enjoying this video, subscribe to the channel now. Matthew 19 is a roadmap to a meaningful life, and we want to explore more with you. Each lesson brings us closer to God. Want to join this journey? Subscribe and join us for more reflections like this. Matthew 19 also speaks of divine justice. God doesn't follow our rules of merit. Think of a time you've received undeserved grace. How was it? Jesus calls us to live with that generosity. Matthew 19 is an invitation to forgive, serve, and love without measure. Are you ready for that? But it's not always easy. Jesus speaks of sacrifice, of carrying the cross. Think of a challenge you face today. Matthew 19 reminds us that God is with you. He says, for humans it's impossible, but with God all things are possible. That phrase is a comfort. Do you believe it? It's time to act. The parable of the workers comes back here. It teaches that God is generous, even when we don't understand. Think of someone you think doesn't deserve as much as you. Matthew 19 challenges us to celebrate grace, not compare. What would your life be like without comparisons? That's the freedom Jesus offers. And Jesus doesn't just speak, he lives it. He walks toward the cross, knowing what awaits. That's love. Matthew 19 calls us to imitate that sacrificial love. Think of a small act of love you can do today. Every step counts. Can I move to the final part? We've reached the end, and Matthew 19 leaves us with a powerful call. It all comes down to living for something greater. Jesus challenges us to put God above everything: wealth, comfort, pride. Think about how your daily choices reflect your priorities. Matthew 19 is an invitation to align your life with the eternal. Are you ready for this? Let's recap. Marriage, sacrifice, grace, purpose. Each lesson in Matthew 19 is a step toward a fuller life. Think of an area in your life that needs change. Maybe it's an attachment, a relationship, or an attitude. Jesus gives us the tools. What will you do with them? A final story. Luke, a young man who left a life of luxury to serve the poor. Everyone called him crazy, but he says he's never been happier. Matthew 19 shows that true wealth is in following Jesus. What's your rich young man? What holds you back? It's time to break free. Living Matthew 19 takes courage. Letting go of what's comfortable isn't easy, but it's freeing. Think of a time you chose the harder path and it was worth it. Jesus calls us to this path. Matthew 19 promises that sacrifice brings reward. You believe that? And here's an invitation. Like this video now. If these lessons touched your heart, hit the like button. Yes. It helps us spread this message to more people. Matthew 19 is a treasure worth sharing. Your like makes all the difference. Matthew 19 teaches that faith is action. Jesus doesn't want words. He wants transformed lives. Think of a choice you can make today to live these lessons. Maybe it's forgiving, serving, or trusting more. Matthew 19 is a guide for the now. What will your next step be? The urgency is in the call. Jesus says the kingdom is near, but it demands a decision. Imagine what your life would be like if you fully lived for God. What's holding you back? Matthew 19 assures us it's possible. The time to act is now, not tomorrow. This message is to live, not just hear. Matthew 19 challenges us to be different, to choose what matters. Think of a small act you can do today: a conversation, an apology, a step of faith. Every choice counts. What will yours be? And before we wrap up, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. What stood out most in Matthew 19? Maybe it's the parable of the workers, or the lesson of the rich young man. Your story could inspire others. Share now and be part of this journey. Thanks for watching. Matthew 19 is more than a chapter. It's a call to transformation. Stay with us, subscribe, and let's uncover more treasures of the Word together. See you next time.